Rachel Martinez stared at her phone screen, the harsh blue light cutting through the darkness of her cramped apartment. It was 11:47 p.m. Another late night. Another long day spent working two grueling shifts, first as a receptionist at a law firm, then as a cleaner at the Wellington Financial Tower. Her feet throbbed, her back ached, but the weight of something much heavier pressed on her chest, the eviction notice on the kitchen counter. 3 days. That was all the time she had left to come up with $2,400, or she and her 7-year-old son, Noah, would be homeless. She'd already sold everything of value. Her grandmother's jewelry, the TV, even the bicycle she had saved for months to get Noah for his birthday. Desperation was a constant companion. The food bank visits were weekly, and she'd mastered the art of stretching the little they had. But tonight, she felt like she was running out of options. Her fingers moved automatically across her phone, typing out a message to her sister Maria in Phoenix. It was supposed to be a cry for help, a way to release her frustration, a moment of honesty in a world that didn't seem to care about the lives of people like her. But in her exhaustion, Rachel didn't notice she had selected the wrong contact. Rachel was tired, tired of being invisible, tired of watching the world pass her by while she worked herself to the bone. There are moments when the weight of it all feels unbearable, and in those moments, it's easy to imagine standing up and shouting at the top of your lungs. To let those who hold power hear the frustration, the exhaustion, and the unfairness that drags people like Rachel down. But how often do we actually get to speak our truth to those who need to hear it? Well, Rachel Martinez did just that, but her words weren't directed at the people she thought they were. Instead, they were sent to someone who could change everything, the very billionaire CEO who had no idea who she was, but who would soon find out. What would you have done if you were in Rachel's shoes? Would you have apologized immediately? Or would you have stood your ground, knowing your voice was finally heard? Before we get into the heart of the story, hit that like button if you think this story is about to take some serious twists. And make sure you're subscribed, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Rachel Martinez sat hunched over her phone, the dim light of the screen casting shadows across her small, cramped apartment. It was nearing midnight, and the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. She had just finished her second shift of the day, the exhaustion settling into every muscle in her body. 8 hours as a receptionist at a downtown law firm, followed by 4 hours cleaning offices in the Wellington Financial Tower. The weariness weighed heavily on her, but it wasn't just physical fatigue that drained her. Her son Noah lay asleep on the pull-out couch, his small body curled up under a thin blanket that had seen better days. His peaceful expression, the only bright spot in the room, tugged at Rachel's heart. She had always promised herself she would give him everything: a better life, security, a future free from the struggles she faced daily. But no matter how hard she worked, no matter how many hours she put in, it never seemed to be enough. On the kitchen counter, the eviction notice sat like a dark cloud, a reminder that the clock was ticking. 3 days. That's all she had left to come up with $2,400 or risk losing everything. She'd already sold anything of value: the television, her grandmother's jewelry, even Noah's bicycle that she had saved for months to buy him for his birthday. The food bank visits had become a routine, and every meal was a careful calculation. A single chicken breast stretched to feed them both for 2 days. Rachel had worked 70 hours that week alone, and still, it wasn't enough to keep the roof over their heads. The frustration of being invisible to the world, of working hard every day and still struggling to survive, gnawed at her. It was a broken system, one that seemed to reward those at the top while leaving people like her behind, stuck in an endless cycle of work and survival. Rachel's fingers hovered over her phone, each key press a heavy weight. The exhaustion was all-consuming, but the frustration in her chest couldn't be ignored. She needed someone to understand, someone who could listen and perhaps offer some hope. So she opened her messages and began typing to her sister Maria, hoping for some comfort. "I can't do this anymore. I'm drowning and no one sees it. I work 70 hours a week and still can't afford to keep a roof over Noah's head. The system is broken. These billionaires sit in their towers counting money while people like me clean their toilets and raise kids on food stamps. I saw him today, Bennett Harrison, the CEO. He walked right past me like I was invisible. Probably doesn't even know I exist, even though I've been cleaning his office for 2 years. 2 years of seeing family photos on his desk, of emptying his trash filled with receipts from restaurants that cost more than my rent. I just want to scream at him, at all of them. Don't they realize we're human too? Don't they understand that their success is built on the backs of people like me who will never escape this cycle? I'm so tired, Maria. I'm so tired of being strong. I'm tired of telling Noah that everything will be okay when I don't believe it myself. Sometimes I think about what would happen if I just told Bennett Harrison exactly what I think of him and his kind. Would it change anything? Or would I just lose the only jobs I have left? As she finished the message, Rachel felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't a solution, but it was a release, an outlet for the suffocating pressure that had been building for weeks. But when she hit send, something didn't feel right. Her heart dropped as she glanced at the screen. Her thumb had slipped. The message hadn't gone to Maria, it had gone to B. Harrison, the contact listed under Bennett Harrison, CEO of Harrison Global Holdings. Rachel stared at the screen in disbelief. She thought she had made a mistake before, misplacing a bill, missing a payment, but this was different. This was a catastrophic mistake. She could already hear the words echoing in her mind. "You're fired." The worst-case scenario had arrived, and she had no way of undoing it. Panic set in almost immediately. Her fingers scrambled to delete the message, but it was too late. A small read notification appeared under the message almost instantly, followed by the realization that Bennett Harrison, the man she had spent 2 years cleaning for, had just read her angry rant. Her breath quickened as she imagined him, sitting in his high-rise office, looking at his phone with a smirk. He didn't know her. He didn't care. And yet there it was, her voice raw and real right in front of him. She pulled her thumb back, trembling. What could she do now? She wanted to apologize, to explain, but what was there to say? She had just torn down the walls she had spent so long building. Her mind raced, panic rising higher. Her heart pounded in her chest, and every second that ticked by felt like it was pulling her further into a nightmare. This could be it. The end of her only source of income, the loss of everything she had worked for. No job, no apartment, no way to protect Noah. Rachel's heart raced in her chest as her eyes locked onto the message she had just sent. A wave of panic washed over her. She wasn't just worried about losing her job, this was much worse. Every worst-case scenario played out in her mind. The CEO would fire her on the spot, and not just for this job. She'd be blacklisted from every corporate building in the city. Her reputation would be ruined, and she'd have no way of providing for Noah. She could already see the headlines in her mind. Angry cleaning lady exposes CEO's lifestyle. The humiliation, the ridicule. It felt like everything she had worked for was collapsing around her, piece by piece. Her pulse quickened, her palms sweaty as she desperately tried to think of a way out. Her fingers hovered over the screen, ready to type an apology. She needed to explain herself, tell him it was an accident, that she didn't mean for it to go to him, that it wasn't how she felt about him personally. But the words wouldn't come. What could she say? Sorry, wrong number wasn't going to fix this. As Rachel sat there, paralyzed by the fear of the consequences, the phone buzzed in her hand. She stared at it, hesitant. The notification read, "B. Harrison, don't delete anything. We need to talk." Rachel's blood ran cold. For a moment, she didn't know how to react. His words weren't what she had expected. She thought it would be a formal reprimand, a cold response to her rash message, but this was something else entirely. She read it again, trying to make sense of it. Was he angry? Was he going to fire her right away? Or was he giving her a chance to explain? Her mind raced as she tried to process the situation. Minutes dragged by, the silence in her apartment deafening. She couldn't focus on anything except the cold dread creeping up her spine. She typed a reply, "Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry. That message wasn't meant for you. Please, I need this job. I have a son." But before she could hit send, doubt set in. Was there even a point in apologizing? Could words erase the damage she had done? She pressed the send button anyway and waited. No reply. Minutes turned into an hour, but still nothing. She tried again, her fingers trembling as she typed, "Please, I'll do anything. I need this job. I have no other options." Nothing, not a word from him. Rachel's thoughts started to spiral again. What if this was it? What if she had just sealed her fate? What if the next step wasn't just a firing, but something worse? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden sound from outside. The low hum of engines. The unmistakable sound of several vehicles pulling up outside her building. Rachel froze, her breath caught in her throat. Through the dirty window blinds, she could make out the shape of 3 black SUVs. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't just being fired, something else was happening. The headlights of the SUVs illuminated the street below, cutting through the darkness. Men in dark suits stepped out of the vehicles, their presence imposing. Rachel's mind raced. Was this corporate security? Were they here to escort her out, to serve her with termination papers? The dread grew heavier with each passing second. A knock on her door startled her, the sound sharp in the silence. She jumped to her feet, her hands shaking. No, this couldn't be happening. She walked slowly to the door, peering through the peephole. The woman outside looked professional, holding a tablet. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest as she opened the door a crack. "Ms. Martinez," the woman's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Mr. Harrison sent us. Please open the door. You're not in trouble." Rachel's mind was racing. She couldn't understand. What was going on? Why would Bennett Harrison send someone to her apartment in the middle of the night? Rachel opened the door just a crack, the woman standing outside looking every bit as professional as the men in suits she had seen earlier. The woman's dark suit contrasted sharply with the dimness of the hallway. She held a tablet in her hands, her expression calm but purposeful. "Ms. Martinez," the woman asked, her voice smooth. "Mr. Harrison sent us. Please open the door. You're not in trouble." Rachel's mind was racing,
I know you're
her breath
scared,
shallow.
but you need
She
to
barely
listen to me
processed
carefully.
the words as they sank
Everything is
in.
going to be all right.
"Mr. Harrison." She hadn't expected a response, let alone someone arriving at her door in the middle of the night. The fear of losing everything flooded back, this time mixed with confusion. Why was someone from Bennett Harrison's office at her apartment? She stepped back from the door, her hands still shaking as she pulled it open wider. The woman smiled, almost sympathetically, and stepped inside when Rachel didn't protest. "I'm Patricia Chen, Mr. Harrison's chief of staff. He received your message and asked me to come immediately." Rachel froze, trying to process everything. "I don't understand," she muttered. "What do you mean, immediately? Why now?" Patricia glanced at the quiet apartment behind Rachel, her voice steady but with a soft undertone of understanding. "Mr. Harrison was moved by what you said. He's asked to speak with you tonight, and we've made arrangements for your son." She glanced toward the small living area where Noah lay asleep on the couch. "A certified childcare provider is downstairs waiting to stay with him while you meet with Mr. Harrison. Full credentials and references, of course." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. This couldn't be real. The idea of leaving Noah with a stranger felt impossible, but what choice did she have? She looked back at Noah, his peaceful face unaware of the whirlwind that had just begun. She didn't know if she should be relieved or terrified. A part of her wanted to say no, to refuse the whole thing and walk away. But there was something else, something about the calm in Patricia's voice that told Rachel this wasn't the moment to back out. "Are you sure it's okay?" Rachel asked, still unsure. "What does he want to talk about?" Patricia's smile never wavered. "Mr. Harrison is waiting downstairs. He's asked me to say that this conversation could change everything." Rachel stood frozen for a moment, her mind battling the need to protect Noah with the desperate need for something to change in her life. She glanced at the eviction notice still sitting on the kitchen counter. This could be the only chance she had. After what felt like an eternity, Rachel finally nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's go." Patricia led her downstairs, and within minutes, they were in the back of one of the black SUVs. Rachel's eyes flickered between the dark city streets outside the window and the woman sitting beside her. Patricia was silent, focused on her tablet, typing something as Rachel stared out at the lights blurring past. It was hard to take in the surreal situation unfolding before her. The world outside seemed to be moving in slow motion, the streetlights casting soft glows on the wet pavement. Rachel's thoughts spiraled. What was Bennett Harrison like? How had her words reached him? Was this all part of some corporate play, or was it something else entirely? The weight of the situation grew heavier with every passing block, her disbelief mounting as they approached the towering, imposing structure that was the Wellington Financial Tower. The SUV pulled up to the entrance, the bright lights illuminating the polished exterior of the building. Rachel stepped out, her legs feeling shaky beneath her. She was standing in front of the place she had cleaned countless times, but never had she entered through the front doors, never had she been anywhere near the offices above. Rachel followed Patricia inside, feeling the walls close in as they entered the executive floor of Harrison Global Holdings. The lobby was sleek, minimalist, with high ceilings and marble floors that gleamed like glass. It felt like a different world, one she had only glimpsed while emptying trash bins, dusting desks, and scrubbing floors. But now she was here. This was the world of the people whose photos she had seen on desks, the world of the CEOs and executives who had made decisions that shaped her life without ever knowing she existed. As they walked past towering glass walls, Rachel could see the vast cityscape unfolding beneath them, the lights of the city spread out like an ocean of stars. Her shoes clicked against the polished floors and her heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment she had never expected. The place she had spent years cleaning but never imagined stepping into was now her reality. It was
Don't worry, we'll
overwhelming.
handle this. Everything is going to be
Patricia
fine.
led her to a private office, its walls lined with books and large windows offering a view of the skyline. There, standing by the windows, was Bennett Harrison, his back to her, looking out over the city. He turned as they entered, and Rachel caught a glimpse of the exhaustion in his eyes, the same exhaustion she felt after every shift. Imagine stepping into the world of the billionaires you've cleaned for. Would you feel small, or would you own it? Rachel sat across from Bennett Harrison, still trying to process the gravity of everything that had happened in the last hour. The imposing office with its sleek, modern furnishings felt distant, alien. She had never imagined that, at the end of a long day, she'd find herself in this chair, facing the billionaire CEO whose life she had glimpsed only from behind the scenes. Bennett didn't sit at his desk. Instead, he joined her on the opposite side, leaning forward with an open demeanor that surprised Rachel. She expected cold professionalism, but what she saw was a man who seemed just as tired as she was. His eyes were tired, but there was an intensity behind them that conveyed sincerity. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here," Bennett started, his voice calm but serious. "Rachel, I read your message." Rachel's heart skipped. He didn't seem angry, but she felt the sting of the truth in his words. "I know it wasn't meant for me," Bennett continued, "but I couldn't ignore it. What you wrote hit home in more ways than I expected." Rachel's breath caught. She didn't know how to respond. Her message was angry, raw with frustration, but the idea that it had touched someone so high up was jarring. He shifted slightly in his seat, his gaze softening. "I've been in a similar situation, actually. My sister Rebecca was a single mom. She worked multiple jobs just like you. She struggled to make ends meet while trying to provide a better future for her son. I watched her work herself to the bone, barely keeping her head above water while I was up here, running a company and, frankly, ignoring the reality that so many people like her, and like you, are living in." Rachel blinked, surprised by his admission. This was the first time she had heard anything resembling empathy from a person in his position. Bennett Harrison wasn't just the untouchable CEO she had imagined. He was human, flawed, regretful, and self-aware. "I didn't see her struggle," he added quietly. "I was so focused on growing the company, building the empire, that I failed to see what was happening in the lives of the people who were making it all possible." He paused, glancing out the window before turning back to Rachel. "Your message made me realize that I need to do better. I need to see the people I'm helping, not just the business. That's why I'm here, Rachel." Rachel's mind raced as she processed his words. She had been so sure this meeting would end with her fired, with her life collapsing even further. But this wasn't what she expected at all. Bennett stood and walked to his desk, picking up a folder. "I've thought about this, Rachel, and I'm making you an offer, something I don't make lightly." He opened the folder, revealing papers that seemed far too official for the situation. "First, your housing. Harrison Global Holdings owns several residential properties in the city. There's a 3-bedroom apartment in Riverside Heights, a safe neighborhood with good schools, public transportation, everything your son needs. The rent will be adjusted to 30% of your income, whatever that income may be." Rachel's mind was still processing the words. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Rent adjusted. She thought about the eviction notice back in her apartment, the weight of the debt that had hung over her for weeks. "Second," Bennett continued, "I want you to take on a new role. We've never had anyone like you in this position. I'm offering you the role of community liaison for Harrison Global Holdings. You would be responsible for making sure our company policies reflect the real-life experiences of employees, especially those in entry-level positions. It's a full-time role with benefits, starting at $75,000 annually, with room for growth. I know it's an unusual position, but it's something I believe the company needs. People like you, who know both sides, can make a real difference." Rachel sat back, stunned. This was far beyond what she had imagined, far beyond what she had even dared to hope for. "And third," Bennett said, glancing at the folder again, "your son, Noah. He deserves the best education possible. I'm offering him a full scholarship to Riverside Academy. It's one of the best private schools in the city, and when the time comes, he'll have full access to our employee scholarship program for college." Rachel didn't know what to say. She had come here tonight thinking she was about to lose everything. Instead, she was being handed opportunities she had never thought were possible. "But why?" Rachel's voice cracked as she tried to comprehend the enormity of what was happening. "Why would you do all of this for me? I'm just a cleaner. I'm nothing special." Bennett sat back in his chair, his eyes locked onto hers. "Because you were right, the system is broken. The people at the top, people like me, have been blind to the reality of what's happening beneath us. Your message woke me up. And you're someone who gets it. You've lived it. And I need people like you to help make things better, not just for my company, but for everyone." Rachel's heart was racing. Was this real? Could this be real? The man who had lived in a world so different from hers, the man whose life seemed untouched by the struggles she faced, was offering her a chance to change everything. "I'm giving you a chance to change your life," Bennett added, "but I'm also giving you a chance to help change the lives of others. Would you accept an offer like this, or would you be too proud? Comment your thoughts below." The drive home from the meeting felt surreal. Rachel's mind buzzed with a whirlwind of thoughts. She had gone into that meeting terrified, convinced that her mistake would be the end of everything. Instead, Bennett Harrison had given her a chance to completely change her life. A new job, a new home, a future for Noah. But as the days passed, doubt crept in. Was this really a second chance, or was she being used? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't seeing. Sure, Bennett's offer sounded genuine, but could she trust someone so far removed from the struggles she faced every day? Was this some corporate charity, a way for him to ease his conscience, or was it something more? Rachel's days were filled with the rush of setting up her new life. She signed the paperwork for the apartment in Riverside Heights, still in disbelief that she would soon have a place where she could sleep at night without the fear of eviction hanging over her. Noah's scholarship to Riverside Academy was just as surreal. She had always told him that if he worked hard enough, he could go anywhere. Now, the doors to a better future were wide open for him. But as she stepped into her role as community liaison, the challenges became clear. Rachel's position was unique. She was the bridge between the executives and the people who kept the company running. It sounded empowering, but the reality was far more complicated. She quickly found herself facing resistance from those who didn't see the need for change. At her first meeting with the senior executives, she was met with skepticism. "We've always done things this way," one of them said, clearly uninterested in hearing her ideas. "What makes you think things should change now?" Rachel was taken aback. She had imagined that, as part of her new role, her voice would be heard, that the company would embrace change. But instead, she was being treated like an outsider, someone who didn't belong in these rooms. She had a choice: retreat into her old role and play it safe, or push through the resistance and fight for what she knew was right. The weight of her decision pressed on her. If she backed down now, she would lose everything she had worked for. But if she fought, she risked being ignored, or worse, pushed out entirely. As the weeks passed, Rachel found herself in a constant battle. Every time she raised her voice, there were those who dismissed her suggestions, questioning her expertise. They didn't see the struggle of people like her, the workers who were barely scraping by while the company profited. They didn't understand what it was like to watch your child go without, to work twice as hard just to stay afloat. Despite the pushback, Rachel pressed forward. She began working on a comprehensive plan to overhaul employee benefits, pushing for higher wages, better childcare options, and more flexibility for workers. The more she pushed, the more isolated she felt. The executives didn't take her seriously, and it seemed like every meeting was an uphill battle. But Rachel was no stranger to hard work. She had been fighting for years, trying to make ends meet. This was no different. Every email she sent, every report she wrote, was another step toward making the changes she knew were necessary. The breaking point came during a board meeting where Rachel presented a new initiative to improve entry-level wages. The tension in the room was thick, and Rachel could feel the eyes of the executives on her. One of them, a senior VP, spoke up. "This isn't sustainable," he said. "If we raise wages across the board, we're going to impact our bottom line. Our shareholders won't be happy." Rachel's heart pounded, but she wasn't going to back down. "The current system isn't sustainable either," she shot back, her voice steady despite the nerves inside. "People are burning out. You can't expect to get loyalty from employees if they're barely making enough to live. If we don't change, we're going to lose our best people, and that's a cost we can't afford." There was silence in the room. The senior VP looked at her, eyes narrowed, but Rachel held her ground. For the first time since taking the job, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could change something. After the meeting, Bennett Harrison called her into his office. "That was bold," he said, offering her a small smile. "You didn't back down." Rachel was exhausted, but something inside her shifted. She realized that she wasn't just fighting for her job anymore. She was fighting for the people who had never had a voice. She couldn't stop now. Could you do what Rachel did and stand up for workers' rights, or would you shy away from the challenge? Let's discuss. As the months passed, Rachel's presence at Harrison Global Holdings began to transform not only the company, but also the culture that had defined it for so long. What started as a single, bold decision, standing up for what she believed in, had snowballed into something much greater. The policies she pushed for began to take shape, and with them came tangible changes. Rachel's new role, Vice President of Employee Advocacy, was more than just a title. It was a seat at the table, literally. For the first time, she was a decision maker. Her voice was no longer drowned out by the noise of the corporate world. She was heard, and her advocacy for the workers, The ones who kept the wheels of the company turning without ever getting noticed, was making a difference. She worked closely with the executive team to implement wage increases for entry-level workers, improved healthcare benefits, and expanded childcare options. The company's commitment to its employees was no longer just a slogan, it was becoming a reality. And those at the bottom of the ladder, the people who had once been invisible, were now empowered in ways they had never been before. It wasn't just a victory for Rachel. It was a victory for everyone who had been overlooked, underpaid, and undervalued. Workers who had once felt like cogs in a machine now saw a future where they could thrive. Rachel had sparked a movement, and it was spreading throughout the company. The changes she had fought for were not just transforming Harrison Global Holdings, they were changing the way corporate America viewed its workforce. From her office on the top floor, Rachel looked out at the city skyline, the lights of the buildings stretching as far as the eye could see. The view was breathtaking. Every shining light represented a story, a struggle, a person who had their own battles to face. It was easy to see the city as a vast network of opportunities, but Rachel knew the truth. Those opportunities weren't always visible to everyone. Her success wasn't just about her rise through the ranks. It was about the ripple effect her actions had on the company. When she looked out over the skyline, she didn't just see the gleaming towers of corporate power. She saw the people in the buildings below, her colleagues, her team, the workers who had trusted her to fight for them. She saw their success, too. Her victory was a reflection of their hard work and determination. It wasn't just about her being able to pay rent without fear of eviction. It wasn't just about Noah having a future at Riverside Academy. It was about creating a future where those who had long been ignored could finally be seen. Rachel's work wasn't over. She knew that change took time and there was still so much to be done. But as she walked through the halls of Harrison Global, she saw the faces of employees who were thriving, who were no longer invisible. She saw people smiling, their heads held high. They were no longer just employees. They were a part of something bigger, and Rachel was at the heart of that change. Would you stand up and make a change in your company? Let me know if you take a stand or stay silent. Rachel had come a long way since that first desperate text she sent late one night. The single mother who once fought just to keep a roof over her son's head was now leading real change in a company she had once only cleaned. From working two grueling jobs to securing a future for herself and Noah, Rachel's journey had transformed her into more than just a survivor. She was now a force for change, someone whose voice was heard in boardrooms where it once never reached. It hadn't been an easy path. Every step forward was met with resistance. But as she looked back at the path she'd carved, Rachel knew she had broken through barriers, not just for herself but for the people she represented, the workers who had been invisible for far too long. Her thoughts were simple but powerful. Change comes slowly, she had said once in a meeting, and it was a truth she had learned to accept. The corporate world wasn't built to be quick to change, and nothing would happen overnight. But sometimes, one small action, one moment of honesty, could ripple through the entire system, starting a chain reaction that affected more people than you could ever imagine. Bennett had learned just as much. The lessons he had taken from Rachel's message, and the steps he had taken to make things right, had changed his perspective. He had always seen his success as a result of hard work, but it was Rachel's voice that reminded him of the people behind that success, the ones who worked long hours with little recognition, the ones who had always been the backbone of his company. Bennett had made a commitment to himself that night, to value those who had helped him rise and to use his position for good. He now understood that leadership wasn't just about making the right financial decisions. It was about making decisions that reflected the value of every person in the company. Rachel's message had shown him the true meaning of responsibility. For Rachel, the journey was still ongoing. She would continue to fight for those who were too often overlooked, and she knew that her work wasn't finished. But what she had learned, and what she had already done, had already set a new standard for her life and her company. Her conclusion was clear. Speaking your truth matters. Having someone truly listen can change everything. Rachel had seen the power of one honest moment. She had seen how one small action could cause a ripple that transformed not only her life, but the lives of those around her. If you believe in standing up for what's right, hit that like button and share this story. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.